They used to call her Giraffe Girl, laughed at her long neck, mocked her in church, shunned her at school. But the morning Ayana vanished into the forest, barefoot and silent, no one laughed. Because when she returned, days later, covered in mud and staring blankly into the sky, even her mother didn't recognize her. What happened to her in those woods would unearth a secret the village had buried for generations, and the truth behind her strange birth would leave everyone questioning what they believed. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To her mother, Ayana was a gift, born beneath a blood moon with skin soft as rain and eyes too wide for someone so small. But to the villagers, she was something else. A whisper, a warning. They stared at her long, fragile neck and said it reached toward the spirit world, that it wasn't natural, that no child should look like that. By the time she was 6, the name Giraffe Girl followed her like a shadow. She ate lunch alone, played alone. Even at church, mothers pulled their children close when she passed. The elders called meetings in secret. One even warned her mother, "Tie a scarf around her neck. Hide it, or God will." Still, Ayana's mother held her tight at night, humming lullabies older than memory. She told her, "You are not a curse, you are chosen." But deep down, even she carried doubt, because Ayana's father had disappeared the day she was born, and with him, the secret he whispered once before he vanished. If she's born like this, don't let the village see. And she never told Ayana what that meant. But soon, she would have to. By 13, Ayana barely spoke. The boys at school called her names. The girls refused to sit beside her. Teachers looked the other way, but every night, the forest whispered her name, softly, like a lullaby only she could hear. She started dreaming of a tall woman, wrapped in gold necklaces, her eyes glowing like fireflies, standing beneath the trees, arms open. And each time Ayana woke, she'd find her feet dusty, like she'd been walking in her sleep. One night she saw her mother burning old scrolls behind the house, hiding something in a wooden box. When Ayana asked what it was, her mother only said, "Don't go near the trees. Promise me." But Ayana had already broken that promise. So, what was her mother hiding, and who was the woman in her dreams? The night Ayana disappeared, the village was loud. Drums pounding, children dancing, fire cracking in the wind. No one noticed when she slipped away. By morning, her mother was screaming her name into the trees. All they found was a single golden thread, tangled on a baobab branch. Some whispered she was taken. Others believed she was chosen. Then an old woman, half blind, rarely spoken to, stepped forward. She said, "Ayana is with the ancients now. They are preparing her." But preparing her for what? And who exactly were the ancients? For 3 long years, no one knew where Ayana had gone, not even her mother. The village mourned, speculated, moved on. But her mother never did. She lit a candle every night, whispered prayers into the dark, and stared into the trees, hoping the forest would give her back. Then one day Ayana returned. She didn't speak much at first. Her body was stronger, her eyes older. Her neck, once a source of shame, was wrapped in golden coils, proud and tall. And when her mother finally sat her down and asked what had happened, Ayana began to speak. She told her about the women, dozens of them, hidden deep in the forest, in a sacred space no man had ever entered. They called themselves the Keepers. They lived without mirrors, without fear, without shame. They bathed in rivers that glowed under moonlight and moved in silence that hummed with the voices of their ancestors. They had found Ayana when she collapsed at the base of the baobab tree, weak, barefoot, scared, and they carried her without question to their home. There, she learned things the village had long forgotten, that her neck was not a deformity, that the women of the Dinka, the Kayan, the ancient tribes across the continent had once worn rings to stretch the neck, not for beauty, but as a mark of spiritual connection. The taller the neck, the closer to the divine, the stronger the spirit. Every day, Ayana was taught how to breathe without fear, how to speak from her stomach, how to stand so tall her shame had no place to rest. They told her, "They mocked you because they were blind, but your body sees." And slowly she began to believe it. She learned the names of stars, the roots that healed wounds, the songs that could call the rain. She sat in stillness and remembered every insult thrown at her, not to hurt, but to cleanse. She cried for the little girl who ate lunch alone, then forgave her. Ayana said, "I died the day I left the village, but in the forest, I was reborn." And as her mother listened, silent, hands trembling, she realized something that sent a chill through her bones. This wasn't just her daughter anymore. This was someone greater, someone transformed. The morning Ayana returned, the sky was unusually still. Even the birds seemed to quiet themselves as she stepped into the village square, barefoot but firm, her body wrapped in deep blue cloth stitched with gold, her long neck adorned with shining coils that caught the rising sun. She was taller now, not just in height but in presence. Her gaze did not beg to be accepted. It told you she had already accepted herself. The children who used to laugh behind their hands now stared with wide eyes. The elders who once shook their heads in pity looked down in shame, and the ones who mocked her the most, some turned their backs, unable to hold her gaze. Others whispered, almost reverently, "Is that really her?" But Ayana didn't return to be seen. She returned to serve. Over the days that followed, something shifted in the village. Quietly, but undeniably. Ayana began to visit homes, unannounced, with no expectation. She sat beside the sick, laid cool cloths on their heads, sang old songs under her breath that made babies stop crying and restless elders sleep. She didn't just speak, she listened, truly listened. She helped families torn apart by silence begin speaking again. She told one man how to forgive his brother. She reminded a woman what her name meant. She helped a grieving mother plant a tree for the child she'd lost. No one asked how she knew so much. No one dared. People stopped calling her Giraffe Girl. They started calling her Seer. But not everyone welcomed her return. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the village, Ayana heard a voice she hadn't heard in years. A voice that once made her shrink. A voice that used to call her names so cruel they stuck like barbed wire in her mind. It was Mara, her old classmate, her loudest bully. Mara didn't yell this time. She didn't mock. She approached slowly, her head bowed, her voice trembling. Her son had fallen ill, mysteriously, suddenly, and no healer could help. She begged Ayana for guidance, not just as the seer, but as the girl she once hurt. There was a silence then, a long, heavy pause. Ayana looked at her, not with anger, but with something deeper. The memory of every insult, every shove, every time she was made to feel like less than human, flickered behind her eyes. She could have turned away. She could have reminded Mara of who she used to be, but instead, Ayana placed her hand gently on Mara's shoulder. "Bring him to the river before the moon rises," she said softly. "And stay with him until he sleeps. Say his name. Say you believe." That night, Mara did exactly as Ayana said, and in the morning, her son opened his eyes. The village never questioned Ayana again, not because she performed miracles, but because she chose mercy over vengeance. And in doing so, she became more than what they feared. She became what they needed. At first, her return was celebrated. Her words became guidance, her touch, a blessing. But peace in the village had always been fragile, balanced on superstition, fear, and memory. So when the rains stopped, so did the kindness. The sky remained dry for weeks, crops withered, the rivers shrank to silence. The goats gave birth to stillborns, and then a child fell sick. The same child Ayana had helped weeks earlier. Feverish, pale, barely breathing. And just like that, the whispers returned. They said she was a curse before. Maybe they were right. She came back different, with new powers. What if those powers come with a price? What if the forest gave her to us, only to take from us? The fear spread like smoke. One by one, the elders gathered beneath the great tree, the same one where Ayana's golden thread had once been found. They summoned her. No celebration this time, no drums, only silence and tightened jaws. Her mother begged them not to, but tradition was louder than truth. One elder said, "This drought, this sickness, it began when she returned. If the balance has been disturbed, it must be restored. The forest gave her. The forest must take her back." They told Ayana to kneel before the ancestors' altar, barefoot, unarmed, alone. She did, but she did not beg. She did not cry. She looked each of them in the eye and said quietly, "You feared me when I was a child. You feared me when I left. And now, because the sky will not rain, you fear me again. But I did not bring this drought, and I will not carry your fear any longer." Her voice didn't shake. And then, through the crowd, her mother stepped forward. For the first time, she spoke of what she had hidden all these years. The secret Ayana's father had told her before vanishing, that their bloodline came from an ancient lineage of guardians, women marked by the heavens, chosen by the earth. That every few generations, one child would be born closer to the veil, a bridge between the seen and the unseen. Ayana's neck was not a deformity. It was a sign, a divine tether. The villagers fell silent, because it wasn't just fear anymore. It was shame. They had nearly offered the very person who had saved them, because they could not understand her. And then, just as the mother's voice broke and Ayana closed her eyes, the sky opened. Rain, heavy, sudden, unstoppable, falling hard on the earth, soaking their clothes, flooding the dust with life. The fire went out in the elder's pit. The sick child coughed once, then breathed deep, and no one said a word, because they all knew what had happened. Ayana had passed the final test. She had given them love when they gave her cruelty, healing when they gave her silence, water when they nearly gave her death. She didn't run this time. She rose. As the rain poured down on cracked earth and trembling shoulders, Ayana stepped forward without a word. Her gown soaked, her feet steady, she stood beneath the old baobab, the same tree where her golden thread had once been found. This time, she was not the girl who vanished. She was the woman who had returned. In silence, she laid both palms on the roots. Whispered words only the forest could understand. Her voice, low, steady, ancient, rose and fell like waves. Those close enough to hear said her words weren't in any language they knew, but they understood. Her body moved slowly, deliberately, hands drawing patterns in the air, eyes lifted to the clouds. Around her the rain did not stop, but it softened, turned warm, like a blessing. The sick child's cries quieted. The fever faded. Within the hour, he stood, walked, laughed, and the village broke. Men who had never wept collapsed to their knees. Mothers clutched their children tighter. The elders, who once condemned her, lowered their heads and begged for her forgiveness, not with pride, but with sorrow. Deep, aching sorrow. They asked her to stay, to lead, to teach them what they had refused to see. But Ayana smiled gently. She forgave them, all of them, not because they deserved it, but because she no longer needed their apology to be whole. And then, she turned away. She walked out of the village barefoot, the same way she had once come into it, only now with her chin high, her gold thread trailing behind her like a comet. As the sun rose, a small herd of giraffes appeared along the forest's edge. They walked beside her, silent, regal, tall, almost as if they had waited for her all along. The villagers watched until she disappeared into the trees, and though they never saw her again, they spoke her name with reverence, not pity. They remembered her not for her neck, but for her courage, her strength, her spirit. And to this day, when the rain first touches the soil in that village, they say one name, gently, Ayana. Ayana was born different. Not broken, not cursed, just different. And for that, she paid a price no child should ever have to bear. They mocked her, they pointed, they whispered behind closed doors. They exiled her not with distance but with silence, until even her own reflection became a stranger. But what they saw as weakness was her calling. What they tried to bury, the earth raised higher. The very thing they feared became the thing that saved them. And in the end, it was not her height that made her unforgettable, not her beauty, not her wisdom. It was her spirit, a spirit that refused to bend, even when the world demanded it. A spirit that could have chosen vengeance, but instead chose peace. That could have returned with bitterness, but brought healing instead. Now ask yourself this: if you were Ayana, would you have forgiven them? Would you have stayed? Would you have walked away? Was her return an act of grace or quiet revenge? Let us know in the comments. We truly want to hear what you feel. And if this story moved you like it moved us, hit the like button. It helps more than you know. For more powerful African tales like Ayana's, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We post new stories every week, and we'd love to have you with us for every one of them.